The abortion industry is using blatant fear tactics to sell Virginia voters on an extremist abortion amendment. They're claiming that without it, women will be denied miscarriage care and government will stand between a woman and her doctor. Those claims are false, but they're being used to distract what this amendment really does: threaten vital protections for women and cut parents out of life-altering decisions involving their own children. Today, Pastor Jonathan Bowell returns to help us explain the frightening reality behind those lies and share why this amendment is too risky, too extreme, and too permanent. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candy Cushman. Well, welcome everyone. Glad to have you with us for another episode of Speak Up Virginia. This is part 2 from last week, where we are covering the most common arguments you will hear on people trying to sell voters that they need to vote through this extreme abortion amendment and put it permanently in our state constitution. And with us to help me break this down is Pastor Jonathan Bowell. Welcome, Jonathan.
Happy to be here.
And also a member of our team helping with the Speak Up teams.
Yeah, it's been a joy. It's been a privilege.
Yeah. And so if you missed last week, we gave you an update on Jonathan's story, which is really compelling, and I think you will appreciate hearing that. So check out last week and catch up. And we also covered the first of 3 arguments we're highlighting, the most common ones you'll hear out there in the media from the Planned Parenthood lobby, trying to deceive voters into pushing this thing through, even though it's going to hurt families and women and obviously a travesty and causing more unborn children to lose their lives completely in an elective way. When we already have some 40,000 abortions in Virginia a year, we're already one of the most extreme states when it comes to abortion because we've already repealed all of our pro-life laws. And so, there's nowhere to go from here, but even more extreme, in a way that is detrimental. So, Jonathan, just real quick, I want to mention last week, just remind everyone, argument number 1 that they'll hear is that we need this to protect Roe, and we pointed out that is false because we're already way beyond Roe in this state, and actually if you vote no, all it does is protect the status quo. And why push through a half-baked amendment that's going to be permanent when it does, when it's not going to protect anything, it's just going to blow the floodgates wide open and hurt safety standards and other things. So just getting through that real quick. Let's go right into argument 2. Want to read that one for us, Jonathan?
Sure, and I hear this a lot in conversations that I have with folks in my community. Not my church necessarily, but as I'm out in the neighborhood, in the coffee shop, I'll hear this quite a bit. No one, especially not the government, should get between a woman and her doctor. Yeah,
we all hear that all the time. And I think to those who don't have all the information and aren't coming from a biblical worldview necessarily, and even some people that are in our church, that can sound persuasive because it almost sounds like I'm for the Women's Bill of Rights. I'm for what women need, the right to have that relationship with their doctor. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I like to surface is that there's really a scene that's being painted here. You have a woman who, in the imagination of the person that disagrees with us, is a good actor, and you have the doctor who is a good actor seeking their best interest, and therefore the government should stay away from that relationship. And there's a sense in which we can understand that, right? I'm pro-limited government, right? But what is the government's primary responsibility, biblically speaking? You look at Romans 13, God gave the government the power of the sword to institute justice. That's what the government is responsible to do, is to protect its citizens, promote justice. So what if the scene is different? What if we imagine a different scene where the doctor is actually not a good actor, but is a bad actor? We're talking about trying to find areas of common ground with our opponents. There's, I think, many people that I interact with that do not share a biblical worldview. They care a lot about the sins of racism or Islamophobia or sexism, these various things, which have become, sadly, sort of catch-all categories. But nevertheless, we can affirm that those things are bad, those things are sinful. What if you had a doctor that was was an Islamophobe and was trying to pressure Islamic women to get abortions to eradicate future Muslims from coming into the population, right? I think anybody, regardless of where you land on abortion, would say, well, that's bad, right? That's evil. We wouldn't want that. Or what if the doctor was a racist and was targeting certain people of a different skin color, and there was actual medical malpractice happening, right? If it's a bad actor, if the doctor's a bad actor in our sort of scene here, we would want someone to step in between that doctor and the woman. That's the government's responsibility. That's the government's job, right? That's why we have police, right? That's why we have laws. And so while we can respect and understand this idea of limited government, the government is there to protect us. And if the doctor is wicked, women would want someone to step in and to protect them from that doctor.
Well, and we don't even have to make up hypotheticals, because we already know that there are exploiters out there that bring in young girls that are trafficking them, and we've seen situations where the people, the so-called professionals giving abortions, have facilitated that. And so I think we are disarming the government in truth from enacting justice in situations like that, and when women's safety is harmed as well.
And we're going to talk more about this, Candi, but you've mentioned the carve-out language, and maybe you can explain a little bit more about that. I know you talked about it in the last episode, but in the interest of protecting a woman's relationship with her doctor, we're protecting doctors, but not just doctors. We're protecting anybody that's aiding and abetting in the
even be a doctor,
in the abortion process, and that includes potentially people slipping abortion pills into women's drinks and stuff like that. Like, it could make it more difficult for those people to be prosecuted for things like that because of the way that the amendment is stated.
Yeah, so that's where you really got to encourage people, just read the fine print. And that's the thing, is nobody is reading the fine print here. We're all there's all these slogans being put out, and even when they go in the ballot box, it's just going to be this deceptive question. And to help people have access to that fine print, we have this resource, our redliner, which shows the question they're going to see when they go in the ballot box on one side, and then the actual amendment on the other, which really isn't getting out there. And we have redlined that to explain what it really means. So one thing, we're going to put an image on the screen here. It has shield language in it. That does make it, as Jonathan was saying, harder to investigate suspicious or abusive abortion, which we know does happen. It undermines accountability. Maybe they're not necessarily abusive, but they were just negligent, which can have life-threatening effects. If you were listening to the podcast when Leslie Blackwell was on here, you might have heard our Virginia March for Life speaker, who headed a Planned Parenthood abortion clinic and talked about the horrible things she saw happening there. If you have shield language in here addressing that you can't really go after, it says prosecute people assisting or abetting, with abortion. That's very limiting. That makes it harder to protect women. Jonathan, another deception that's out there is this claim that they actually have in the ballot question itself, this claim that it has restrictions on late-term abortion. I mean, that's just false.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as the law currently states, 3 physicians have to sign off on a late-term abortion. How the amendment is stated is that's going to reduce down to 1. Yeah. And if that's not crazy enough, the one single physician that can sign off on that procedure is the one performing the procedure, is the abortionist.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
And so I think anybody with any common sense can understand this sort of conflict of interest here. Again, we're continuing to go back to, we're trying to find common ground with people that do not share a biblical worldview. So I think anybody, regardless of where they land, can understand that the person that stands to benefit the most financially shouldn't be the only one that needs to sign off on the process, right? Yeah. There's a lot that goes into these procedures, and the health of the mother is at stake. And if there's no other physicians like her primary care physician or her gynecologist who are going to speak into these situations, then you're just going to have abortionists who are trying to make money for the abortion mill signing off on this.
Yeah, and especially with the abortion pill, where it doesn't even have to be in person at this point. So, another thing that they just quietly dropped without telling you is our current law has requirements for late-term abortion up in third trimester. It says the doctor has to say it's for there has to be substantial and permanent harm to a woman's health, just to summarize.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this amendment takes that out. Now it's just mental health, And
who knows what that means?
Yeah, it's a huge loophole. So basically, it eliminates, this amendment, if it gets through, is going to eliminate even those safeguards remaining for late-term abortion, which there aren't many. We pretty much have at this point, except for that caveat, abortion up until birth in this state. It's taking off any remaining restrictions, leaving it in the hand, as Jonathan very well pointed out, the people that are benefiting, the abortionists, profiting from this, which just isn't common sense. And so it's just really clear. But one thing I want to get into, Jonathan, also, which we didn't have a lot of time to talk about the last episode, was what this abortion amendment does get in between, and it does get in between parents and their kids.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so if we want to just read the language out of the amendment itself, it says in the first line, every individual has the fundamental right to reproductive freedom.
And so the point is, individual, it does not say adult. That does include kids.
Mm-hmm.
That is not an accident. That is a tool, and you can expect, it's a tool, and you can expect that to be used as a weapon to eradicate parental rights moving forward in the courts. And so just to break this down, a 14-year-old, is an individual, for those of you with teens in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And right now we have parental right laws in our code. But when you put it in the Constitution, it instantly overrides anything lower down in the code. So overnight, legally, we have a new framework where this trumps any parental rights laws. That's the reality.
And I know we don't want to get stuck in hypotheticals, but you can just imagine if parents are, whether it's their fostering or even their own children, are in a situation where they're trying to go get an abortion and the parents are trying to persuade them not to do this trying to help them understand a biblical worldview, this amendment could be used against the parents.
I think it will be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jonathan, how do you talk to parents about this? Because you have parents sitting in your church every day, every Sunday, I guess.
Yeah.
How do you put this in real life terms for them?
Beyond pull your kids out of public school?
Beyond that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, again, we in some ways we're saying the same thing, but it's just to be informed. We want to know what's going on with our kids, and we want to know the sort of things that the government's doing that affect our kids. And that's not being a helicopter parent. That's just being well-informed, right? God has given responsibility to develop, to raise up, to disciple, to educate children to parents. And so we need to take that responsibility seriously and not sort of outsource the care, the protection, the education of our kids to the government or to anybody else.
Yeah.
And so if that's true, if that's sort of our biblical framework for what paideia, for what the nurture and admonition of the Lord is, then we need to be aware of these things. So again, we're reading the amendment, we're understanding what's happening, we're having conversations with our neighbors because this really does matter.
Yeah. All right, well, let's wrap up with the takeaways for this point. So if someone is coming up to you saying, well, we need this amendment because we don't want the government getting in between the woman and the doctor. First of all, again, this amendment goes way beyond abortion. We actually need government to protect women with safety standards. What we have right now, you can see we have unlimited abortion already with some 40,000 abortions a year. But what this abortion amendment will do is get between parents and their kids. So you want to explain that. So let me just kind of go over, response number one. I like what Jonathan said in one episode last time. Ask them a question. When they share their concerns, challenge them to read the fine print. Help them understand this amendment, when you read the fine print, is protecting abortionists and the abortion industry, not women. It's taking away parental rights. Anything you want to add on to that, Jonathan?
Well, no, and I think just to land the point, you were saying, ask them, why do you want to protect the woman's relationship with their doctor, right? And this assumption there is that there's a care and concern for the health of women. And as Christians, generally speaking, we agree with that as it's stated. And so we also care about that. How does this amendment do that, right? And so, I mean, there's many folks that are pro-abortion but don't want boys and girls sports, for example, right? Because that could harm their daughters. This amendment opens the door for those things to happen.
Well, more specifically, I think it would open the door if your individual child is wanting to experiment, a boy being a girl, because they have unlimited sweeping reproductive freedom, or if they want to go to their boyfriend's house and experiment sexually, like you could be in court because you tried to do what
Prevent
you're supposed
that from
to
happening.
do.
Yeah, that's right.
So last week we emphasized the amendment is too permanent. And I want to emphasize this week under this point that it's too risky. Not only does it prevent safeguards from being in there to help women, but also it is going to lead to the eradication of parental rights. So too risky. Let's jump into argument 3. And that is, this one is just kind of a heart-rending one to tackle, because a lot of people, especially I know people in our audience, people listening, will have experienced this personally. And I think the Planned Parenthood lobby, they know this. So the abortion industry is working overtime, putting out this fear tactic that we have seen at least 3 op-eds just in the last week or 2 saying, well, we need this to protect miscarriage care. And they will trot out these people that give these scare scenarios. Maybe they actually have gone through hard things that is heartrending. But they are propagating a lie that you need this abortion amendment to address that. So, Jonathan, let's just respond first from a pastoral perspective, how you might respond to a woman dealing with this fear. Well, I'm going to vote yes because I want to make sure I get miscarriage care.
Yeah. Well, once again, I love to start with questions. And so if this is a concern of somebody, I would ask them, well, what is a miscarriage? What is a miscarriage? I'm not sure that everybody really knows what the words mean that they're using. So what is a miscarriage, and why are women so sad when it happens? And I think everybody, just human nature, can recognize that there's something that has been lost there, right? And I think that surfaces for folks that this is more than just an inanimate clump of matter, right? That this is a life.
Interesting,
right?
how it should lead back to that, right?
Right.
I mean, when you're grieving over the loss of something,
or
a person.
What has been lost there?
Yeah.
So that's one thing to maybe enter the conversation as a question like that. I also think with an issue around miscarriage, it's for me personally, it's easy to use our personal story, right? We've had several miscarriages, my wife and I, and so being able to speak to that situation and what that experience was like for us, and speaking personally that, look, we not once felt any sense that we weren't going to get the care that we needed when we went through this. And there's no law anywhere that prevents women from receiving miscarriage care. It's just a lie. Doctors are required. I mean, they take an oath to do no harm and to help. If somebody comes into the hospital with any sort of issue, self-inflicted or otherwise, right, they will receive care in that emergency room.
Yeah. And so let's just, I think, state the plain facts here. And I do thank you, Jonathan, for being vulnerable with us and sharing. And I think anytime that if you're talking to someone and you can be open about personally what you've experienced and help them understand that, I think that is definitely going to help people understand the truth in the situation. And then just stating the plain facts about it, that miscarriage treatment is not elective abortion. It just isn't. Yeah, that's not what we're voting on here. The procedures that are used to treat a miscarriage, including D&C, Jonathan very well explained, this is already clearly protected in Virginia law. I think you summarized that well. So why do you think this argument is working with people? Do you think it's just fear?
Why do I think the argument's working? I mean, the basic answer is because people are blind to the truth and they love the darkness, and so there's almost a willful ignorance that they're playing towards. I think that oftentimes people just don't really want to think, that they prefer just to be told what's going on and sort of follow the marching orders. More of that,
yeah.
And so it's
or they want to be perceived. I'm doing the right and good thing. And,
right. There's some virtue signaling there for sure. Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right.
Well, I want to summarize, Jonathan, because you're in a good place, a unique place here where you can speak directly. When you're talking to someone who's lost a baby and is at the same time believing these lies about the abortion amendment, how can you address that this actually isn't going to provide better health care or protection without being in a place where you're kind of breaking that person's heart all over again?
Yeah, well, and I would say, again, go back and listen to episode 1 because we talked quite a bit about how to approach opponents, how to approach people that think differently than you. And so I would go back to that SALT method of seeing them, seeing this situation that they're in and wanting to have sympathy for the place that they're in. Jesus saw and had compassion for the rich young ruler, right?
Yeah, and maybe they're not even opponents. They're just people like your neighbor.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That just is buying the lies in the media, the 24-hour media cycle, and on their socials, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the old kind of pithy saying, it rings true, is people don't care what you know until they know how much you care. And I do think that that's true. And so part of it is meeting people where they're at. Jesus did this. He spoke differently, with a different tone, a different posture, different words and questions with each person that he talked to. It's really interesting if you go back and look at it. He went real hard in the paint against the establishment.
Against the hypocrites that were rulers.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. The ones that were actually doing the deceiving, he went pretty hard in the paint. And so, if you listen to maybe a sermon of mine or hear me talking to a group of our members about these issues, and we're talking about the scare tactics, we're talking about the abortion industry, right? I'm going to go pretty hard in the paint on those things. But if I'm meeting with a family in our church, or I'm talking with my neighbor over the fence, that there's a desire to sympathize. Sympathy means sum pathos, to be with in feeling. Sum is with, pathos feeling or emotion or passion. So meeting them where they're at in that emotion, in that hard place, understanding where they're coming from, and then finding, again, those areas of common ground to speak the truth into.
I love you saying that because I really feel like the church should be the safest place where people are able to have these conversations, and too often it's not. And so I'm glad you have that parameter, that model. Just to kind of summarize what Jonathan's saying here, because I think these are good takeaways. So when you are talking with people that maybe have experienced this personally and they're hearing these scare tactics out in the media, you want to approach with empathy first and facts second, not in the reverse order. And just remembering that woman that has experienced this, that's not the opposition. She's being used in a cynical way by people that want to exploit that story and sell this lie and get that yes vote at any cost. So we should honor that loss and still refuse a lie. So it's, just kind of doing that grace and truth approach. So Jonathan, let's summarize. Let's put these takeaways on the screen here. The lie that you'll hear again is that we need this abortion amendment because we got to make sure women get miscarriage care and other health care. And I think we can start out with just, we agree. They do deserve miscarriage care and strong health care, but actually this abortion amendment is going to further the opposite of that with the shield laws it has in place for-profit abortionists, big pharma industry. That's what they're protecting, not the woman. What other points might you point out here, Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, we understand. We all have been to the doctor, been to the hospital.
Yeah.
They take an oath to care for all who come in the doors. And so anything that says otherwise is just not true.
So we're going to put this on the screen for you, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, kind of summarizing the big areas you want to keep in your mind here when you're out there interacting with people. The 3 things voters need to remember most about this amendment. Jonathan, take us through those one more time here.
Yeah, so because it's a constitutional amendment, it is too permanent. It's going to make it nearly impossible to pass legislation to protect the unborn. Number 2, it's too risky. Once again, it cuts parents out of these situations, and it really has the carve-out language that protects the abortion industry and the pharmaceutical companies and those that stand to benefit the most, not actually aiming to protect women. And then number 3, that it's too extreme. Virginia law already goes way beyond Roe, and this goes even further and locks it in. It's too permanent, it's too risky, it's too extreme.
Yeah, I really hope that helps all of you. Just make it a little easier as you're out there interacting on this and trying to counter all the lies that are floating around and being pushed out there constantly. Too permanent, too extreme, too risky. I may have done that in a little bit different order, but I think we got the point across, Jonathan. I'm going to give you the last word here. What do you want people, what's one thing people can do this week to take action now that they've heard 2 episodes of this, hopefully?
Yeah. My encouragement would be to pursue one conversation. Pursue not 10, but just one conversation with a neighbor, coworker, family member who you know may not share the same biblical perspective as you. And to pray for God to give you that opportunity, and then when he does, to pray that God would give you the boldness to seize that opportunity, and then that he would give you the wisdom to do it effectively and persuasively. And then see how it goes. And I think the more that we practice this, the more that we, and this is true of evangelism, this is true of all sorts of stuff as Christians, when we have uncomfortable conversations, the more we do it, the more natural it becomes. Practice doesn't make perfect, but practice makes natural. So just putting it into practice. Yeah.
I think that is so important, because I think a lot of the reasons a lot of bad things pass is because people are silenced. It's been, they're responding to the pressure that is purposefully applied to make you feel like you have the bad opinion, and they want to shut you up. And so people need to have confidence to speak, even if you don't feel really great about that. Maybe you're not going to do it exactly right. I mean, that's okay. Like you said, go out there and speak up.
And that's where it comes back to that starting point from episode 1 of our biblical worldview, and that Jesus Christ is Lord, right? Who do we fear? We fear the Lord. We do not fear man. So at the end of the day, who's going to be the Lord of your life? Who are you going to answer to? Who's your leader? Who do you want to serve? Yeah. And then step to it, act accordingly.
That gets to the fear of man. Like, we're going to talk if we're not controlled by fear of man.
Right. That's exactly right. Yep. Right. And we have everything that we need. The truth will set you free, and the truth will and can set our neighbors free. And so let's go out there with boldness and confidence that the Holy Spirit can use us, can use our words.
And this is winnable, folks. I mean, just look at the redistricting battle. This, don't feel like it's a lost cause. This is something that we can, I think we don't know the end of the story here yet. We just need to remain faithful where we're at right now. And to help you with that, we do have lots of resources on our website. I just want to highlight some of those again in case you missed last week. So we've got that red liner. I know lots of pastors, lots of people are using this. It's got the abortion amendment question that they're going to see in the ballot box on one side, and the actual amendment that they're not seeing anywhere on the other side. Make sure you access that. If you want something more simple, there's a vote no flyer, and it has a QR code or a link to just show you how you can just join the movement and get involved. And in fact, if you want to do more than just the speak up part, you can volunteer calling people, distributing flyers and things like that. Just go to our website, familyfoundation.org, click on that Stop Unlimited Abortion or Vote No. I think it's a Vote No banner. Click on that, and you'll see a big area there where it says Join the Movement. And once again, let me just mention the town halls. I think by the time you're hearing this one, the ones remaining are Bristol and Roanoke. So there's a lot going on. Get on our email alert. Make sure you're getting all the info. Thanks for joining us. Jonathan, thank you. I'm so glad that there are pastors like you out there, that you are modeling for folks how to remain true to their biblical convictions and have the boldness to speak truth and grace. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
My joy. My joy.
Well, thanks, everybody. Make sure you share this, because we'll get the word out to more people. We'll equip more people if each one of you takes just a minute to share this. Remember, we are stronger when we speak together. We'll see you next time.